architecture is based on geoprocessing tools, and these tools are designed specifically for altering pre-existing geographical data to create new layers. There are more than 600 geoprocessing tools. So GIS operation, to manipulate data, you typically take input data sets and you manipulate the data sets and produce output data sets, and you often use multiple data sets. So examples of geoprocessing tools are merge, append, dissolve, clip, buffer, and within overlay you have two types, which are union and intersect. So the first geoprocessing tool we'll be looking at is merge. So we could see here in this example, all input data sets must be of the same type. So you cannot merge line with polygon, and you cannot merge point with line. So here in this example, we have two polygon features. And let me use the draw tool. So we have the western half of the United States and the eastern half of the United States. And when you merge these two, our output is the whole United States. And again, this here is showing you that when you use ArcGIS Pro, where to find the merge geoprocessing tool. So you would find it within the Arc toolbox, and specifically within data management tools, and then further clicking on general, and then you could see merge here. So we are using ArcGIS Online, and it's similar on how we use these geoprocessing tools. The next one is append, and appends features together. So here we have two features and they join them together, and this is our output here. And you could also append streets. Here we have separate street layers for neighborhoods. This is called Squirrel Hill North, and we have Squirrel Hill South, and they appended these two streets and for this neighborhood. So specifically for these two streets layers, you click on the append geoprocessing tool. For input features, you will put the two layers. So again, we have Squirrel Hill South and then Squirrel Hill North, and our output feature is what we just saw earlier. Again, we'll see it here in this next slide. This is one street layer with all records and field items in our attribute table. So append, it combines feature classes without overlay, and this brings attributes along. Tables of input feature classes must match exactly, so you must have the same classes, same order, same definition. So our next geoprocessing tool is called Dissolve, and for your lab assignment, for our lab course, you will be using the Dissolve tool for ArcGIS Online. So the dissolve tool, it aggregates items that have the same value. So you could see here the color-coded purple polygons. They're aggregated together and it's combined as a single polygon instead of many polygons. And here in this example, this dissolved the lines of the street names. So we have Main Street, and Main Street is repeated 4 times, but when we use the dissolve geoprocessing tool, we just see Main Street appearing 1 time. And you could also dissolve polygons on habitat class. So with this example here, we could see specifically the blue color coded polygons. Habitat class B, there are about 6. And then when you use the dissolve geoprocessing tool, we just have a single B polygon. So it aggregated the B habitat class. And for dissolving, it eliminates all of the attributes in the table except the dissolved one. However, you can choose to summarize the other attributes, such as if you want to look at the acres of the habitat class, that will be summarized. This is another dissolve example. You have states, but you need regions. So you could see here in this attribute table, our field name, it's very small, but our field name is called subregions. And within that, we have Pacific and mountain. So when you dissolve specific states that fall within these subregions, your output looks like this. So we could see these states here were dissolved and aggregated into one single polygon, which is called specific. So again, this is an example of the ArcGIS toolbox within the Pro software. So if you're ever to use the Pro, you would go to Arc Toolbox and use Data Management Tools, and then you'll find Dissolve. And you'll put your input features, which is your polygon layers. For example, our polygon state layers, and then our output feature class. Our next geoprocessing tool is called Clip, and Clip creates a new layer which includes only those features of the input layer that fall within the area extent of the clip layer. So this is our input layer here, and our clip is a circled polygon boundary. So our output is based on that clipped region, that clipped area. So you could think of it as a cookie cutter. So here we have our input coverage and our clip coverage. So our output coverage only covers a circled portion. So it looks like it's covering only this portion here of the map. You could clip different features such as points, lines, and polygons. Here we have polygons, and we could see the output. Our clip feature is a square, so our output is based on the polygons clipped over this boundary. And then we have points in this example and lines in this example. Here is another example of clipping. You have your input layer, which is streets. So the blue lines in this map is the streets. And our clip layer is the central business district. And the central business district is color-coded yellow. So you want to clip your streets within the central business district. And our output layer are streets within the central business district. Like we see here, it clipped out only the streets within the central business district. The next geoprocessing tool is called buffers, and buffers allow us to analyze proximity. So you can create a buffer zone around a point, line, or polygon feature. In this example, we could see there are multiple buffers around points. And then we have single buffers around lines. And these can be uniform or variable, and you can construct polygon areas within a specified distance of features. So these are buffers for different features, for the point feature, line feature, and polygon feature. And again, when we are talking about point, line, and polygon, these are all vector features. So this column is showing us no buffer. We have our point, our line here, and our polygon here. And when we apply a 200-meter buffer, you could see that it creates a circled buffer around the point, and then we have a street buffer and a polygon buffer. And for the 500-meter buffer, we could see a larger circle around the point, and again a larger buffer around the roads and the polygon building here. And in this map, for this map they created buffers around hazardous waste sites, which helped to facilitate evacuation in case if there was a chemical spill. This map is based on buffers around Japanese cities, and you could see that the yellow is a shorter distance, whereas the blue concentric buffer, that one has a larger distance away from the city center. So you can do multiple buffers around a point, line, or polygon feature. And buffers can be dissolved. Here, this one is an example of not dissolving the buffers, and to choose that you would need to click none as the dissolve option. So here you could see there are many buffers and they are overlapping each other, so it looks quite messy. But in this example, they did dissolve the buffers and they clicked all, and it has a single buffer around the streets. So again, you would find it in the arc toolbox and buffer, and you would input your features and your output feature, and you would list the dissolve type. So in this example, it's none. The next slide is based on map overlays, and this is the process whereby two layers with a similar or common map extent are combined into one new product or layer. So one of the most basic questions asked of a GIS is what's on what? So example questions are what land use is on what soil type, what parcels are within the 100-year floodplain. Within is just another way of asking on top of. What roads are within what counties, what wells are within abandoned military bases. And before the days of GIS, cartographers created maps on clear plastic sheets and overlaid these sheets on a light table in order to create a new map of the overlaid data. So overlay yields such valuable information, and so it was paramount to the development of GIS. And overlay functions are geoprocessing tools. The overlay functions that we'll be looking at are union and intersect. So for map overlay, you are superimposing two data layers on top of each other. This is to show relationships between features or create new data from the intersection of data layers, and it has the same coordinate system. So these are the two types of overlays. We have union and intersect. So in these examples, you have the input of two polygon layers, and our output shows the same area extent of the two polygon layers. Whereas an intersect, it only shows where the common interest of where these two intersect. So our output shows a smaller area. So union combines all possible areas, whereas intersect finds common areas. And they both combine attributes from each table in the output layer. So these are the same types of maps based on, and our layers are elevation, geology, and vegetation. And we could see how union has a greater extent of the area showing all of these three layers, whereas the intersect, it shows a smaller extent of the areas where these elevation, geology, and vegetation layers overlap. So you use union when you want to overlay two polygon layers so that the resulting output layer has the combined attribute data of the polygons in the two inputs, and it contains all the polygons from the inputs whether or not they overlap. So again, our output is showing the two polygons, and it doesn't overlap here, but it's still showing it because they're joining the two layers. And this is an example of union. We have a floodplain polygon displayed on top of a parcel polygon. And you're using the floodplain polygon to select parcel polygons. So the overlay of, when you're using union of the floodplain and parcel polygons, you will have this type of result. The single parcel becomes two parcels. One part is inside the floodplain. So if I zoom in here, you could see that this single parcel was separated into two. And if we see our attribute table, -1 is showing us that it's outside of the floodplain polygon, and 3 is within the floodplain polygon. This is another example of union. This starts with the Pittsburgh zip codes and neighborhoods. So again, you have two different attribute tables which contain different data. This attribute table is showing us zip codes, and this attribute table is showing us neighborhoods. So the union neighborhoods and zip codes to include the zip on each neighborhood polygon. So your result are polygons are unioned with the same information, and you must have the same projections and the order of layers when you are doing union. And you can only do this function with polygon layers. And this is another example of union. So if you do not wish to build a house with close proximity to commercial land near interstates, the user could buffer the interstates by X miles, and then the user could union the two layers. The final result would represent all areas on which the user does not wish to build a house. So any area outside of here would be a good area to build a house because you're outside of this buffer zone of not being close to the interstate highway. Intersect is another overlay tool, geoprocessing tool. So you use intersect when you want to overlay a layer with the polygons in another layer so that the resulting output layer has the combined attribute data of the features in the two inputs and only contains features that fall within the spatial extent of the overlay polygons. So in this example, we have flood zones that intersect buildings. So the blue is the flood zone, and then we have the polygons in a purple shade representing buildings. So the result is only building polygons that intersect flood zones with combined data fields. So we could see that the output layer is showing us our buildings that intersect with the flood zones, and the output layer color-coded it as red. And this intersect can be done with points, lines, and polygons. And here's an example of intersecting polygons and lines. So here we have lines. Here we could see intersecting point polygons and lines with the point output. So our intersection is only occurring here with a point output because this is where the point, line, and polygon intersect, only in this area. And we could see here intersecting polygons and lines with a line output. So where the line intersects with the polygon, that will show as your output layer, which are these two lines, three lines I mean. And the next type of geoprocessing tools we'll be looking at are based on the raster format. So raster overlay, this uses different methods compared to our vector feature layers that we just went over because of the grid cell data. The layers are registered, and for raster overlay you use map algebra. Map algebra are equations performed on individual cells from each layer to produce the output layer. So again, raster format is based on pixels or grid cells. A simple raster data can be a photograph in JPEG format, like we see here in this example. It's a more complex kind of raster data would be a DEM, also known as digital elevation model, which is formed of pixels with values which can be mathematically manipulated. And for suitability analysis, these kinds of mathematical manipulations are very useful. So we could see here with the DEM, the pixel values that make up that raster. So again, for map algebra, there are simple algebraic expressions. An example is a sum algebraic expression, so 4 plus 5 equals 9. Here is an example of a sum algebraic expression. So we have two separate raster layers, and they're using sum. So the grid cell here is 5, and the grid cell here is 9. And when you sum that up, your output shows that it is 14. So again, you could check that with all of the grid cells when it overlays on top of each other. When you sum up those grid cells, it equals to that sum. So 4 plus 6 equals 10. So this is a simple algebraic expression. So when you're using map algebra in ArcGIS, you're combining two raster layers, map A and map B, and you're using the sum tools, so map A plus map B. And your output is this example here. Our highest value in this layer that we could see here in this legend is 961, and our lowest is 179. So if you check the highest and lowest value of our result map and check the value of the other two maps, you can see that the addition has been successfully done. This is a simple overlay analysis when you combine information of two layers for some meaningful results. So to end this lecture slide, I do want us to look at a quick problem and how you could solve this type of problem using GIS. So our problem is that you are a developer and you want to build a new hotel near a local ski hill. There are already many hotels in the area and you want to build your hotel close to the ski hill within 1 kilometer, close to the road within 200 meters, and somewhat close to another hotel within 500 meters. So the question is, what data layers do you need and what steps will you use in a GIS to determine the best location? So one possible answer, you will need to have layers, 3 layers at least. So one layer showing the roads, one layer showing the ski hill, and one layer showing other hotels in that area. And then now we're going to be using geoprocessing tools. In this case, we'll be using buffer. So you'll be buffering the roads by 200 meters, buffering the ski hill by 1 kilometer, and buffering the other hotels by 500 meters. And then lastly, you're going to use intersect for all of the 3 buffer layers. So where these 3 buffer layers intersect and show a common area, you'll have your final result. And your result are all areas that are within 200 meters of a road, 1 kilometer of the ski hill, and 500 meters of another hotel. So for our lab course, you will be finding the best site for a hospital in a specific area, and you will be using buffering and intersect just like this example here. Thank you for watching.